welcome to our first episode. This is kind of exciting, right?
Hi.
Right. So one of the things that I learned in this process in talking to both Dave and Amber is that I think this is a very exciting...
Today, we're talking with Amber Perez, Executive Director at the Borderland Rainbow Center. The mission of the center is to create a community space in which lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning, intersex people and their allies can heal, grow, and empower themselves and others. The Borderland Rainbow Center connects LGBTQIA+ people to resources for improved physical and mental health, economic stability, legal rights, education, spiritual and cultural enrichment. Today we are talking to Amber Perez, the Executive Director of the Borderland Rainbow Center. Amber is an El Paso native and is passionate about development opportunities for our queer community. Amber, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I want to begin with a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the Borderland Rainbow Center. I want to talk about how you describe yourself. What are your identifiers?
So I identify as a queer, demisexual woman.
That's very good. And to talk about your background and how you came to being the now almost newly minted, correct?
Yeah.
Executive Director.
Almost, yeah.
And tell us how long you've been in your role.
Sure. I guess a little bit of background. I am an El Paso native. I love El Paso. Like everybody, I left. I went to school at UC Berkeley. I went for music, theater, and business. And writing. That was really my main thing. I ended up actually in business because I've been a musician my entire life. I played instruments since I was 3, and then people started to kind of put contracts in front of me, and I didn't really know what I was looking at, and I signed one that eventually just was not good for me. And I was like, this is not going to happen again. It's like, I'm not going to let this happen to me, and I'm not going to let this happen to anybody that I love again. And that's really why I went into business. I then got a master's in business, again, for the exact same reason. I opened up my own business, and then I've been pretty active within the queer community here. I started helping out with some of the sound and audio with the Borderland Rainbow Center. I eventually moved and started doing their marketing committee. And then I moved into the actual board. And then a few months later, I moved into the vice president position. And then a few months later, this came open and we decided to have me step in for some time. And it's been probably one of the best things I've done.
So I wanted to talk about your vision, your goals, and the rebranding.
Sure. Well, I think for me, the vision of the BRC, my vision moving forward, right, is that we did such a great job with the Maslow's hierarchy, right, of doing immediate needs. So food pantry, we have therapy, we have all these things to help stabilize. Well, to me, we now go to the next level. So we don't just build, we've done such a great job doing a safe space, right? But now we're building a brave space. And what a brave space means is that you feel like you have the foundation to reach for new goals. So what I want to see us doing is, actually this morning I had a meeting with the workforce to see how they can come in and start helping with us. We're going to be working with our staff, and they're going to be working, some of them are going to come and work here, so that we can begin connecting them with how to get financial aid, how to get into the university, how to get houses, how to build a business, all of it. That's the next step that I see, as well as bringing in all the disengaged, gay people, right? So people who have families, they're it's my partner and my kids, right? It's there's not a space for me necessarily. And so I want us to begin bringing in them, and then business owners and all sorts of things.
What do you see as the rewards of this job, and also what are the challenges?
I think the rewards of the job are watching people grow. That's really the biggest one. And whether it's staff or clients or volunteers or other members of the community that we see that we have somehow reached, right? Maybe we saw them here at video game night, and then a few months later we see them doing these other things. We know that we've helped play a part in that. When it comes to challenges, the biggest challenges I think are always finances. Of course, it's constant fundraising and donations and grant writing, but probably also it's misinformation, right? It's having to go out and kind of explain to people who may think they understand what it means to be part of the LGBT community, right? Or have an opinion already where they say, because we actually had the DA Hicks came in, right? And he wrote me an email. You were here.
Yes,
yeah, you were here. Yeah.
So, I was impressed. I was like, wow.
Right. Well, hopefully we'll have the mayor here. I'm trying to get him in here.
Excellent.
But, he wrote a letter, an email on Monday, and I had thanked him. He was like, one of the things I really love is that I see that what you guys have done is what you're doing is you're opening it up to the community. And it's like, as opposed to segmenting yourself, you're saying, this is how we function in the community. We are a part of the community. We are intersectional. And that's like helping people understand that we are an intersectional group is, I think, one of the biggest things. It's not just about being gay. It's about, hey, I'm gay and I'm Latina and I'm mixed race and I'm educated or I'm not educated, whatever. It's all of those things.
Multifaceted human being.
Exactly. We're still human.
Yes, exactly.
What was the purpose of District Attorney Hicks's visit? What was his, how did he become engaged with you all?
So I'm working with one of his assistants. So I'm actually working with Assistant County Attorney Aaron on a family violence type of conference in October. And we're sitting on that same kind of committee. I say committee, it's really just a group of us working together. And so as we're talking, I was like, hey, I would love for you guys to come down to brunch. And they were like, okay. So they actually reached out to me and said, hey, when can we come down? When can we meet your people? When can we come and engage? And I was super shocked at how aggressive in a good way they were, right? It's like, okay, well, we'll be there. They actually showed up. They're like, what time do we show up? How should we dress? How do you want us to come? It was the cutest thing ever. And they came and they listened. So they took a tour, but they actually listened and they started to engage. And they let me know, like, hey, we want to come down again. It's like, we'll come to brunch. We'll come to whatever you want. It's like, but we also want to talk about justice issues now. We want to talk about, and because one of the things I spoke to them about was the fact that the queer community and PD and any type of law enforcement, we don't have a good relationship whatsoever. That's like, and there's a good reason for it. It's like, but at the same time, our people need to feel safe. They need to have somebody to turn to when they're being abused or taken advantage of or something has happened to them. And I found that to be super interesting that he was willing to make these steps.
That is an encouraging step for the city of El Paso, that's for sure. I think those of us that grew up here, and that's everybody in this room, remember that we were never antagonized by the police department or the law enforcement or whatever. Feeling supported is a very different thing. And so moving forward from here. And then I have to say that having the Borderland Rainbow Center as an institution in the community made that opportunity to build those bridges possible. So that kind of underlines the importance of the Borderland Rainbow Center and having organizations like this in our community.
I see us as a nexus point, right? Where we help build collaborations so that instead of us all being islands, we're all one community.
Dave Castillo talked a little bit about that when we were asking him about the different organizations in our community. And again, going back to our history, which is one of our viewpoints of this podcast is, we're kind of an older generation of LGBTQ people, kind of with our, looking towards the present day LGBT community, which are two very distinctly different environments. But what he was made very clear is that when he started Sun City Pride, is that the more organizations, the better. There is nothing that says that one organization has to handle everything. If we can create a patchwork of services and opportunities, and some of it might be bars and entertainment, some of it might be family-oriented, some of it might be legal support, financial support, food insecurity support, then we're doing our job as a community, as opposed to looking at it from a singular perspective.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that kind of mentality, it's like where you have to do everything, will lead to destruction. It just will. Either people are going to burn out, or people's feelings are going to get hurt. All sorts of things happen like that. This type of work is 100% collaborative. It should not just be one organization. The fact that we are the only center for 350 miles. I'm not going to lie, there are nights where I have sat and I have laid in bed and I've thought about that, and I've thought about, okay, well, what about the kids in Alamo? How do I reach them, right? What about the kids right outside of Ruidoso? What about them? It's like, it is a lot of weight. In fact, we took a trip to Ruidoso this weekend, and at one of the gas stations, probably I think 86 miles, because I asked, I was like, hey, can you look up how far we are from El Paso? It was a young trans woman. at the cashier, and all I could think of was like, I should be serving you. It's like, so how do I reach you? So I think it needs to be multiple organizations, and we all, as opposed to like, I know in the past there's been a lot of like issues and all this, and that's okay, people have issues, but you need to sit down and you need to talk about it and say, hey, my feelings got hurt, and that's where this came from, and that's all right.
It's more of a network. We've got to create a net.
Yeah, exactly.
That's representative of the entire, all the aspects of our community.
Exactly. And hopefully we can find somebody to help fill in those gaps. And like my goal, I would love to see another organization that does stuff like we do, take something that we do and say, hey, this is what I want our specialty to be. And I'd be like, I got you. Let me help you write those type of grants. Let me help you. Let me show you what we've done. You don't have to do this. But this is what we've done, and you can decide what you want to do with it.
And you know what, in looking at your website and whatnot, I noticed that your programming is heavy on psychosocial and counseling, which I think is much needed for people who are coming out and who are identifying and who are dealing with topics such as gender reassignments and things like that. So I wanted to talk about your clinical program.
Yeah. So our clinical program, it has access to therapy, of course. So it's a sliding scale, and it's also grant funded. So if you fall within certain parameters, you get free therapy. And so I think it's between 86 to 94% of our people have never had access to therapy, ever. This is the first time they see a therapist. We're actually looking to expand it, but we are also looking to make sure that we are partnering with the correct people, because sometimes it's beyond, right, like what we can do capacity wise, right? So we want to make sure that there are other places too that we can refer to that we know are inclusive, we know is a safe space, and we have some sort of communication with them. It's very popular. It's in high demand, and like I said, we're trying to expand it right now. In fact, I just wrote a giant grant. We'll be hearing back from. Hopefully, we'll get it, and if we do, it'll double the size of our therapy right now.
I wanted to talk about DRIEP.
Yeah.
Diversity, Resiliency.
Institute of El Paso.
Yeah, Institute of El Paso. So,
sure. So let's talk about the name, Diversity, Resiliency, Institute of El Paso, right? Even in this conversation, you're like, well, is that separate or is that with you? Well, it's actually a program under us, but there is a specific reason it's named that way. Back in the day, because we work with large organizations as well, right, to train them, they were like, hey, we want to take your training, but I can't convince my boss to write a check to something with the word rainbow in it. So what happened is it became DBA. So now it looks like its own organization, but it's really a program under us, which is fascinating, right? Because we're talking like, this is a few years ago, so at the very least 2020, 2019. Can you imagine? They're like, my boss won't write a check to somebody who's got the word rainbow in it, which means they need the training.
Yes.
You know, you can take their money.
Yeah.
and over time, they'll learn to like the rainbow.
Yeah, exactly. And so our education has trained over 60,000 people worldwide out of the Borderland Rainbow Center. We have asynchronous training. We also have in-person training. We've trained people at Georgetown. We have a really close relationship with Georgetown. We've trained people out of Harvard. We did Burning Man. We've done the city of El Paso. We're trying to work more with the city of El Paso and El Paso County. And then we did an office out of Canada. I think it was the embassy, the Toronto embassy, I think. I know. 60,000 people. Our anti-racism module training is one of the most popular and one of the best in the nation. Our LGBT allyship and view is also one of them. We're developing new programming all the time. We just did one on kind of sustainability, like climate. I'm trying to think. I don't want to say climate racism, but that's kind of like what it is, because we were understanding that people don't understand what climate change is doing and how this is also socioeconomic and a racism issue, right? This is class and race. Because if you see where things are located, you're like, well, interesting. But so we've developed this education with a fellow and in partnership with Texas Rising and I think Sunrise El Paso. Yeah, we do a lot of stuff.
That is amazing.
Yes.
So the goal of that program primarily is simply training and education to various organizations.
And then to individuals as well. And one of the things, when I came in and started looking at the programs, I wanted to make sure that we're not just creating education that everybody wants, right? That like there's this demand. I also want us to create education that everybody needs. I told our staff, I was like, hey, you create what you think this world needs, not just this community, this world needs, and I will find the audience for you. That's my job. Your job isn't to worry about whether someone takes it or whatever. Yours is to create it because it needs to be there, and then my job is to make sure people know about it.
In your newsletter was the idea of the intergenerational rainbow league.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? That's a new concept that you developed as your position came aboard.
Yes. So what we did is we married 3 different programs. So we had youth, we had senior, and then we had something that was kind of like case management. I took the case management component out of it because that's very intensive. And instead we did, because I saw the need also for that middle as well. Because there's youth, there's seniors, and then there's like everybody in the middle who are just kind of like, I guess, not me. And so we decided to put that all together.
Okay.
Right? And so what that does is we're creating social events as well. We're doing peer support groups as well. We're starting to make these runs to connect everybody together. And because we do have a very strong like psychosocial type of thing, clinical thing, right? Yes. But we also need that other component. And because there isn't a component necessarily in the city where people can just socialize and hang out in a dry environment. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the bars. We had an event at Hope and Anchor actually, but it was a family event. We had Loteria during June. It was a chance for us to kind of test it out. It went over smashingly. People ate as opposed to drink. And we reached a different demographic that we had never reached before. We'd never seen that demographic come out.
And the goal is to bridge the generations?
We literally lost an entire generation.
Yes.
And all of their knowledge and all of the things that they had to offer us, right? But now we see the youth. Now we see like more of the millennials, right? And now we see that slightly older generation. So we see these 3, and we have no idea how to interact. We have no idea how to pass knowledge back and forth. So I'm super excited about seeing how this program evolves and how we're able to really use this.
And so the goal of the program is to just create opportunities for networking, for social events, that sort of thing?
It's a lot of socializing right now. We're trying to build, right? So what we do is we're starting with different programming like specific to the youth right now, and then specific to different generations, and then we'll begin to merge them together. We just have to build the actual like demographic, right, for them, and then begin. At some point, I would love to see, and this is probably years in the making, but to see like somebody who, like one of my friends is an attorney, right? So she owns her own office, and she'd come in and she'd be like, there's this young, 19-year-old like, I want to be an attorney. It's like, hey, we've got a mentor. Why don't you guys talk?
Yeah. Wow.
Like that's what I see years from now.
I wanted to talk about your vision for helping us to be understood by the public and to be accepted as an integral part of this community. What is your vision for that?
I think it's got to be this marriage between the two, right? Like, because we always have to be super cautious about emotional labor placed within marginalized communities, right? And I think we're really in that model. The rest of the world's kind of moving slowly forward, right? But it's in this invitation to us, right? Where come to brunch, come to this, come here. And yes, we'll have us go there, of course, always. We always try to meet people where they're at. But we also now ask them, come and visit us, come and get to know us, see what we're doing. Because I think once you step in, like I'm telling you, Hicks's team, like he himself, he's a Republican, I'm pretty sure, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he was blown away. He was blown away by what our community looked like and what we were doing, not just for our community, but for everybody. And I think that's what they need to see, that we are everybody.
Regarding politics, and particularly the trans community. So what are your challenges here with the center?
Our biggest concern are our trans youth, of course, right, and their families. We're seeing them go and seek care, of course, in New Mexico, and we're seeing issues even with that. We don't know how to be supportive in a way that isn't going to get us in trouble, and the way that I've kind of approached that is like, well, if we get in trouble, we get in trouble. Because we're not going to say no, we're going to help.
Take action, ask questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. And in fact, we, even with the drag, I know it's not technically the drag ban because people will argue about that, but we all know what it is.
Yeah.
We've held events, or we held an event, and they were like, well, are we getting in trouble for this? And I said, well, if we do, we'll pay the fine.
Yeah.
It's like, because they can't silence us.
Sure, making good trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Looking towards the future, what do you see as challenges for the community as a whole, looking forward for this?
I think the biggest challenge we have is working together.
Yeah.
It's just letting go of the past, working together, and understanding that we're all human. and that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to miss a text. We're going to have a bad day and say something like maybe out of sorts, and understanding that that's okay, that it doesn't matter what is said. What matters is what comes next. This is the way I live my life, right? Because at any point in time, I'm going to upset somebody, someone's going to upset me. But that's not the point. The point of life is what comes next. Do we try to move forward from that? Do we have a conversation? And sometimes it's a super uncomfortable conversation, right? You're like, especially if you're the one who messed up, you're like, so I messed up. Would like it if you forgive me? Because you have to actually actively listen to each other. And so I think that's really what we need to focus on.
How is El Paso more tolerant, different, or more accepting than other parts of Texas or other parts of the country? And if that's even the case anymore, if we're going to have a statewide law that we're having to face, how would that play out in El Paso, do you think? I know it's all speculation, so I'm asking simply for your opinion.
I think like our intergenerational Rainbow Link, they actually, one of them is a school advocate, so she goes out and advocates. So she'll update us. She'll tell us, Coronado has signed on again, and we're now thinking, hey, we need to do something. We need to give them a certificate. We need to acknowledge, we're gonna be affirming, right? We're a safe space. So there are some schools that are, and there are some that are just not necessarily the friendliest. But we also work a lot with the GSA. They are the ones who bring a lot of things to our attention. And in fact, there have been some issues as of late at some of the other schools. I don't want to name the schools where they are purposely misgendering people. They're purposely saying, staff has said stuff that was homophobic or transphobic, and it's being accepted. But we do see the GSAs take it and say hey, this isn't right, and then they come to us, and then we try to help with that. So I don't know necessarily whether it's more or less accepting. I think that if this law goes in, I think we're going to see probably more of that, though, to be perfectly honest with you, because we all know what happens. Remember when Trump was elected,
yes,
right? And all of us were like, okay, that's shocking. This is horrifying. What is my life going to look like, right? And I remember maybe not even a week later coming out of Target with my partner, and on my car, they had written the word faggot.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, first of all, okay, that works. I was a little confused, but that's all right. I'm like, I accept it.
Sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, I was all on the scale of insults, I don't know how I feel. But all jokes aside, it was terrifying. It was the first time something like that had actually happened in El Paso to me. And all I could think of in that moment was this is how it begins.
Yes.
It's I'm going to see this more and more often, and we're going to have to be a little bit more cautious and kind of just pay a little bit more attention. I think I did. I think when that happened, I was like, oh no. The alert went right back up, and I'm like, okay, where am I? What's going on? I'm living in that world. So I think that's what we're going to see.
Okay, I just follow up on that. Why do you think they did that on your car? Did you have a rainbow sticker? I
think they saw it. So my partner...
Oh, they saw you.
I'm pretty sure that my partner at the time was very transmasculine, right, looking, but still had very feminine qualities. So I think that they misconstrued the insult. I think was more towards them, right, as opposed to us. I think there was just some confusion, but they must have seen us because I didn't have a rainbow. I had nothing on there, so it had to have been somebody who watched us.
And to interject, that just emphasizes the need for education. It's even then, if you're going to insult me, do it at least correctly. Yeah, I'm offended. You can have your opinion, but use the right terminology,
when I moved into an apartment building when I was, a long time ago, 20-some years ago, and I guess people, I was getting used to being in the building, and people were getting used to me. I come home one day, and somebody had written on my, communal mailbox, Ted es puto. And I said, well, at least it's advertising.
No such thing as bad advertising.
Maybe I'll get a day out of it. You never know. I just left it there. And eventually somebody else took it down. And I was like, okay, cool.
Well, but that's the crazy thing, right? Because if you notice, we're all laughing about both, right?
Yes.
Our first reactions are laughter, right?
Very good.
Because that's how we have to kind of interact with the world. Where it's well, it's funny because at least get it right, or hey, you got it right? But that's our defense mechanism, right? Because at the end of the day, though, I know, for me, I was like, oh, shit. shucks, like here it starts. But I think that's super interesting, and like it's a commentary on our community in general. We're so resilient, right? We're so willing to be like, well, whatever.
How does the center help build that support network for the person coming out or that is out?
So I think a lot of our like support groups, right, and our social events, that's where we really began to see those connections being made. We literally had a video game night, our first one hosted last month, and we saw two people literally become best friends. Literally. Like, mom came in and was like, and one of the kids was like, this is my new best friend and they're coming to my party. And they have been inseparable since. And so by having these moments to interact with each other, we're allowing the space to build this community and to build that chosen family. Because you're absolutely right. Chosen family isn't just within the queer community. It's everywhere. And I think one of the harder things that happens out here in El Paso is that because we are so family-based, right, when it's hard for us to pull away from toxic situations. And it's hard for us to say, hey, Mom, what you're saying is hurting me. I need you to stop, right? And actually, like, and know that it's going to take time. Because it is. Nobody can change like this. Because unless, like, there are certain circumstances, right, where that's going to happen. Normally a life and death situation. But real change takes time. And so, but it also takes constant reinforcement. It's like, hey, when you say that, it hurts me, right? And then at some point you say, hey, if you continue to say this, my family and I can no longer come. It's like, and it's going to hurt me and it's going to hurt you. It's like, but you're hurting yourself and you're hurting me. So I think it's super important to understand that it is okay to love your family and want to spend time with them, and also say, hey, this is my boundary. And if you can't respect it, then it's okay for me to move more into, like, lean into that chosen family and talk to that chosen family and say, hey, this is what's going on. Because 9 out of 10 times, someone in that group's going to be like, oh, same.
How you all stay afloat in offering your programs?
So the majority of our stuff is grant funded. So it is a constant writing of the grants and finding of the grants. We do get donations as well. The average donation we get is about $24, which I think is, for El Paso, because I am familiar with our socioeconomic status, that's actually really good for us. That means that people care. Mm-hmm. So we do have a recurring sponsorship as well, donation, and the sustaining donor, and I'm working more on that, right, to get that out and to people who aren't just from, like, in El Paso, but are expats who are away. And I'm like, hey, you left. It's like, but you need to help build our city because we helped build you, right? And so we do that, and then we do just donations as much as we can. And our volunteer program, like, you can volunteer for anything. Like, we've got a great food pantry. It operates Monday. We have the actual food pantry on Monday, but they come in Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to pick up food and sort and do all that fun stuff. We have opportunities to come with the social events as well. We always need somebody, like a second or third person, to come and just help oversee stuff. I mean, it's not super tedious, but there's always opportunities. You can even do social media with us. We'll help train you and help you do these different things. But pretty much anything.
To our listeners, if you dig deep in your pockets and also lend a hand.
Yeah, yes.
Tell me about the food pantry really quickly. Do you all accept donations here, or another way? So essentially, the way the community can get involved is to become a sustaining member, sustaining, however you would call it, sponsor. Mm-hmm. Donate time, mm-hmm. food, mm-hmm. And when how does the food pantry work? Have you experienced a lot of food insecurity within the LGBT community?
So yes, and it vacillates. So our food pantry is open to both. It's both open to allies and LGBT. LGBT will come through because it is like a drive-through, but a lot of times they come and will tell us, as opposed to coming to the pantry itself. So we'll have stuff ready. But we do see a lot of food insecurity. We see a lot of housing insecurity. We see a lot of just job insecurity as well within the LGBTQ community. And like I said, just this morning I was talking with Workforce, and a lot of times people think about, like, the queer community, and they think about, like, expendable income, they think education, and they have a very specific idea, right? But that's only a percentage. There's another percentage that lives in literal poverty.
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly part of the purpose of our podcast is to talk about the entire spectrum, mm-hmm. and not just the stereotypes.
Uh-huh.
The florist and his husband, and the architect, and the doctor who are headed headed to the Bahamas or something. yeah, it's not like that for everybody. That's really not for us.
Thank you, Amber. We've been talking to Amber Perez, Executive Director of the Borderland Rainbow Center. For more information, please visit us at queeronda.com.
And that's
And that's a wrap on this very first episode of Queer Onda El Paso. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at feedback@queeronda.com or visit our website and leave a comment. www.queeronda.com. That's www.queeronda.com. And listen for new episodes dropping the 15th of every month. Until then, agarren la onda, queers.